Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, the podcast all about animation not made by the mouse. I'm your host, Octaviano Macias, and today I figured I can try to revisit an idea that I tried doing before. This was never actually publicly uploaded just because I didn't feel satisfied with the episode, so this is my second attempt at doing it. I'm going to be talking about the show Smiling Friends. Now, before we get started, I just want to say if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. Go ahead and comment down below, like the video, and if you really like it, go ahead, ring that bell. Now, if you're watching this on one of the various podcast sites it's on, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I just want you to add this show to your list. With that out of the way, let's get back to the show. Smiling Friends. It's a very popular show on Adult Swim. It was essentially made by some YouTubers. I know they're most known for doing Oni plays. I have to admit, I'm not someone who's followed that all that much. I've watched a few things since the show came out, but I'd be lying if I said I was a huge fan of that stuff. So nothing against them. I just don't really do a whole lot of the gaming scene. So yeah, it's honestly a very weird show. Absurd barely begins to define it. It's for that reason that I decided that for this one, I would not do a very specific episode. I tried doing it with the first time I did this, again, not publicly available for a lot of reasons. But yeah, this is best talked about as a whole rather than any specific episode. Unless they decide to do something really big, which they haven't at this point. For the most part, I'm just going to keep it to that. It's just going to be an episode focused on Smiling Friends as a whole. This first started off as a pilot, wherein we're introduced to the concept. It's basically a couple of guys who work at this place called Smiling Friends, where the whole basis is, hey, look, if you're depressed, sad, whatever, call these guys up and they'll try to cheer you up. Nice wholesome premise until you watch the show and you realize that that's barely scratching the surface of what actually goes on. But that's generally what drives every episode of the show. Like the first episode was basically like, hey, look, this guy's going to be shooting himself. And he's even holding the gun throughout the entire episode, unless he finds a reason to live. You have the main characters, Charlie, Pim, Alan, Glip, and Mr. Boss. The two that you follow for the most part are Charlie and Pim. Charlie's a taller guy, chubby, yellow fellow with a big nose. Pim is a smaller one. I want to say pink, maybe kind of purplish, but he seems kind of pink. Then you got Alan, who's a taller, leaner fellow who is red. Glip, who's small and green, and Mr. Boss, who's, I want to say he's like the most normal looking one, but he does the weirdest shit. But he's like the one that from the group that would look like a normal human in any other cartoon in comparison, because he's just like an old man. He kind of reminds me of Pops from regular show if Pops was completely unhinged. But that's their general main cast. Each episode you got different characters that show up that need help. In the second episode, for example, they have to help out this celebrity named Mr. Frog who has ruined his career by eating a TMZ reporter. So they're trying to rehabilitate him, and they're like, okay, let's get him off drugs. Turns out he's worse without drugs, so they get him back on drugs, and then he tries going on like Jimmy Fallon's show, and ends up saying some slur that we don't even know what exact slur it is, and that's generally the whole thing. Is like just whole thing trying to fix him up. There's another episode where they go to this fantasy area to help cheer up a princess. Along the way, they meet this Bilbo Baggins like character, and Charlie ends up becoming more of like this fantasy hero, whereas Pim becomes this Gollum like character because he's mad that he's the one that actually wanted to go to the fantasy area, but he's suffering badly, while Charlie is quickly gravitating towards everything. And there's generally plots like that. There's even an episode that they tried hyping up as a special where they went to Brazil, only for like the twist to be like the entire episode is just them at the airport realizing that one of the characters messed up on their reservation, so they're trying to figure something out. And by the end of the episode, they're like, okay, we're just gonna go back. We're not even gonna do this big Brazil episode. So it's that kind of show. It's very absurd. Like I said, a lot of his dialogue heavy. Like they'll say some stuff. It's random, but at the same time, there's like a lot of joy to it. Just because it's like a very specific style. Like it feels like the fact that this was a show created by people who started off online and specifically were doing the whole gaming stuff makes sense, just because a lot of it does feel like something that you would see from like a gaming channel, at least from what I've seen, where it's just people commenting on games, whether it's like they're doing like their little riffs, kind of like a Mystery Science Theater, if you're familiar with that, reacting to the stuff and making little references and stuff like that. It feels like that. I just want to apologize if I sound weird. It's because I have a cold right now. That's generally how the show goes. It's very, very absurd, and you kind of know it when Adult Swim, as of this recording, the second season hasn't started up, but they were hyping it up for April Fool's Day. If you know Adult Swim and April Fool's Day, you know that was going to be, there was going to be some hokey thing going on there. And in that case, it was just, okay, we did a couple of episodes as puppet episodes, which, yeah, they pretty much recreated. For example, like the Mr. Frog episode, the season finale of the first season, as puppet episodes, which was very charming, very reminiscent of, like at first it's very reminiscent of like the Jim Henson stuff, but then it just downgrades to just being whatever, like there's sock puppets and stuff like that. If you want to check these out, as far as I know, they're still available on YouTube. I don't know if they'll put them on Max, but it's worth watching. Even if you've already seen those episodes, it's just very cute to see how they recreate it. But then they actually did it, do the start of the second season with this one, where they introduced a character called Gwimbly, who, according to the universe, is supposed to be essentially a Crash Bandicoot, Banjo-Kazooie type character. Like he's like a platformer from decades ago who hasn't really had that much in the way of games in recent years, which, yeah, that episode really hit hard with a lot of people regarding the whole concept. For me, it especially reminded me of Banjo-Kazooie, which I don't want to say was the main inspiration for it, but considering that there was a lot of little things in there, and from my understanding, when they released like the character design sheet for it, there was apparently like quite a few things from Banjo that were taking from it. I'd like to believe that's the main inspiration for this character. You can definitely see how much this character has meant to a lot of people, because after this episode came out, the internet exploded with Gwimbly jokes, like, stuff like, oh yeah, let's put in like the actual games that he supposedly was in, or just references to a point where I can't remember who said it, but someone pretty much was like, yeah, there's a good chance that we might get this character in an actual game, before we actually see the characters he was referencing get a revival, which would be pretty funny and sad at the same time. But I could see that happening. It's just an incredible joke of a character, because, like for starters, it was impressive enough that they made this character look the way he did. Like a lot of shows, when they do like the whole reference to retro gaming or whatnot, they just go with the pixelated, like 8-bit, maybe 16-bit era of gaming, or they just do something without any real thought. Like they'll just be like, well, it's a video game, whatever. This one, they went the extra mile, like, okay, this character looks like something out of like the PS1, early N64 era. I would say more so on the PS1 with the way the blocks work, despite the fact that it's kind of hard on the eyes, just because it's harder to notice what exactly it's supposed to be when you do it with such low quality graphics. It works because you know what it's supposed to be, what what kind of video game it's coming from, and it adds to the charm just because you don't really see a lot of gaming characters like like in entertainment go to this effort. Like even Disney, when it came to like Wreck-It Ralph, like they originally wanted to do it as an 8-bit thing to reference the arcade thing, but they eventually decided like, okay, we're gonna make him fully CG whenever we're inside the video game world, just because we think it's harder to make it clear what he emotes when he's 8-bit. Which I'm not saying that it was a bad choice, but it kind of tells you like, okay, so there is a challenge in doing this kind of thing, and luckily these guys were able to handle it just fine. And yeah, a lot of the episode is just references upon references. Like they introduce a CEO character who's like constantly eating chicken nuggets, and the whole thing pretty much is just him being like, look, it's not even enough for me to just own the Gimli IP. I pretty much have to sit on it. Like, and you can't make your own game because it has to be coming from me, and I'm not interested in making it a game. So it's my IP to sit on, which is true for so many things. I saw people saying like, "Oh, well, this is true for everyone but Nintendo," and I'm like, "Nah, Nintendo's got a few IPs that they sit on. Like, granted, they're not as bad as other people, but that doesn't make them, completely absent in that discussion." But yeah, it's a really comical episode, which is just great in a long line of episodes from this show that are just really funny. I mean, like the episodes I described just barely scratches the surface. The season finale is a Christmas episode where Charlie pretty much dies and is in hell, because I like at first you're thinking like, okay, it's gonna do like the typical thing that a lot of shows do where we're gonna bring back stuff from throughout the season to kind of show that the whole story's been connected this entire time. But like, no, he dies. He goes to hell, and it turns out that hell's frozen over because the devil is depressed. So he's like, okay, well, I gotta cheer him up, and hopefully that'll get me out of here. So he goes and meets Satan and tries to cheer him up, and Satan's become a gamer who has like Postmates and stuff like that. It was, I believe, the final performance of Gilbert Gottfried. He wasn't the devil, but he played God in that episode, which was hilarious. You kind of get the sense that they probably just got him through like Cameo or something like that to record his lines, or maybe he was actually in the studio and was fully aware of what was going on. But I don't know, the way he voice acted in the episode, it kind of makes me feel like he was just kind of contacted via Cameo, which, regardless of it, is funny. Like whether he was in the actual studio or if he was done in Cameo, I kind of feel like makes it a little funnier just because it feels like something cheap but fun. Regardless of it, fun enough appearance. And in general, I don't know. I feel like that pretty much sums up a lot of this show. It's just a very funny, weird, absurd show. Some of the stuff that I feel like normally wouldn't make me laugh just catches me off guard and makes me laugh. Whether it's because of the characters' reactions or whatever, like with that fantasy episode that I mentioned, it's it gave birth to one of the most common memes that this show has gotten, when Pim explains like the whole backstory of how he got interested in the fantasy area. It ends with him kissing his dad on the lips with the backstory, and you cut back to Charlie in present day, just reacting in the most nonchalant way possible, just saying, you kiss your dad on the lips? And I just love that because it's like, yeah, it's like gross out, weird humor right there, which was already kind of funny just because of the way it was animated. It became even funnier when, Charlie says exactly what we're thinking, but in the most calm way possible. Like, yeah, he's still disturbed, clearly, but he's like, I'm just trying to process. Is that what you said you did? Which is a lot of the show's humor. I can't wait to watch the rest of the second season once it comes out. I don't know if this episode will be out before then. But if it is, I'll be glad to watch it as you guys are watching it, or if it's out just right after, then, well, hey, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I did too. But yeah, Smiling Friends is just a very creative show. I heard someone compare it to Ren and Stimpy in terms of its place, where it's like, okay, a lot of shows have gotten stale, and this is kind of trying to break the mold. I don't know if I fully agree with that, especially because I just feel wrong kind of comparing anything to Ren and Stimpy at this point, from a creative standpoint, given everything around that show's creative problems. But I can kind of see the idea of that, where it feels like a lot of shows are just IP based, are focused on setting up these long storylines and stuff like that, and there's just an original show where a lot of it comes down to, well, this is the group of characters that are in the show. This is what they do, and we're not doing this overarching story. Like, we're gonna, of course, have some continuity, but it's not gonna be anything too deep. I mean, the first episode itself ends with Pym having this existential crisis to a point that he's probably already dead on the table by the time the show ends, and yet, he's back in the later episode, and even when they bring it up, it's like, whatever. I don't know. It's definitely something where I wouldn't take too seriously, but, because of that, it's definitely found a nice little place to fill that, you don't get too often. Even in these comedy shows, where it's like, look, this is very much just a sit down, laugh, don't think too hard on it. You're not gonna get too emotional with this, which is perfectly fine. The comedy, of course, is gonna carry it, and the comedy definitely carries it. There's really not much to say beyond that, because that is a very bizarre show, and I know I could go really deep into this, but this ain't that type of show. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next week.
Jesus Christ, what is that? What is that?
I don't know.
Alan, grab it.
Thank you for coming on today. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, where you'll see video versions of these podcasts. And if you just want to listen to them, there's always the option of just following the podcast on their various sites, whether it's Spotify, Podbean, or Apple Podcasts. Whatever you choose, I hope you continue enjoying these. And if you want to support me even further than that, there's always the option of Patreon. And in any case, again, thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.